All right, folks, welcome back. We got a couple of fish. We're going to kind of talk about how to clean fish and fillet fish and get them ready for pan frying as well. And as Kevin and I were setting things up, it occurred to me that if you're going to hunt and fish during a pandemic, that is the ultimate in physical distancing from everybody else. So a couple of things first when we get into cleaning fish, or getting one ready for be a pan fry or for a fillet. If you've seen me do deer videos or other meat cutting videos, you've seen the arsenal of knives I use. And one of the knives I talked about earlier being the workhorse of a meat cutter, and that's the 6-inch boning knife. Knife styles, whether it's a straight or a curved knife, is a personal preference. I personally like for a boning knife to have the straight boning knife. However, when I get to fillet knives, the one thing I like is a little bit of curvature to the fillet knife, as well as you can see here, the fillet knife's got a lot of flex to it. That's something I don't like in my meat cutting knives. I prefer a non-flexible or a stiff knife there, but on these fillet knives you want them to be a little bit flexible, and you'll see as we go through this reason why we want them to be flexible. So there's a couple ways we can do this, and again, everything that we've talked about in the past comes into play. All right, try to be as clean as you can. Every once in a while I'll go online when I get ready to do these fish cutting demonstrations, just to kind of refresh my memory on different techniques and so on. And I see people putting videos up where they got just a chunk of wood, like they went out backyard and got an old 2x4 or an old 2x12, and that's what they cut on. Not a real good idea to do something like that. Number one, even though you clean it off, it doesn't necessarily mean that wet is clean, all right? Number two, I don't know what's been on there. Was it painted? Did it have lead paint on there? And so on and so forth. So I'm going to recommend that if you're going to do something like that, clean it first, sand it, put some butcher block oil on there. I think if you go to a woodworking store, you get the wood bowl, salad bowl, a sealer. Put that on there as well. If not, I would rather you work from a block top like we see here as well. Again, we're trying to be safe. Keep in mind food safety. Always keep knife safety in mind as well. Fillet knives, just like everything else, needs to be sharp and so on. Drop a knife, let it fall, don't try to catch it. Make sure you know where your hands are as well. Now, the one thing I've seen some folks do online when we're working with fish, because you're working so close to your fingers and you're working so close to your hands, is that I've seen some folks utilize a cut-proof glove, a Kevlar glove, or even a steel mesh glove there as well. You can see I always use latex gloves over cotton gloves. The cotton gloves are not going to give me much protection if I cut, but they will give me a little bit, all right? If it's a severe one, there's not much these cotton gloves are going to do. The other thing that these cotton gloves do for me is they keep my hands warm. And you say, what difference does that make? Well, if your hands get numb and so on, you kind of get to the point where you forget where your hands are and your knife is, and you're more likely to cut yourself there as well. So if you have a problem like I do with being cold, you might want to get you some cotton gloves. I always use the latex gloves over top of them. Number one, the cotton gloves can soak up any type of fluid, whether it be fluid from the meat or fluid from the block tops or the water or so on and so forth. So it kind of prevents that as well as I can peel these off and put a new set on and be even more safe as well. All right. So let's talk about these guys. We got a couple of fish here. So we look here. We got a catfish. We're going to finish with this guy, and we got this little sunfish or bluegill type panfish. And these are really fun for little kids to catch. All right. You take your kids out with just a worm and a bobber and throw it out there, and you just good family bonding time to catch these little bitty panfish, whether it be crappie, bluegill, sunfish, anything like that. And everybody wants to experience food tastes better when it's yours. All right, if you raise it, if you catch it, if you process it yourself, it seems to always taste better. Now you can come in here if you wanted to and try to fillet this guy, but it's going to be very, very difficult. He's not a very big fish, as you can see there. You can do it, not saying you can't, but usually when you get to these type of things, we're looking to be more of a pan fry type product, okay? And so this is where we're going to have to not only remove the scales, but we need to remove the internal organs as well. And so scale wise, several different methods you can do. You can go to the store, you can buy the actual scaler type stuff. Some folks will take their knife like I'm doing and turn it flat there and move it against the grain, okay? Like so, to remove the scales. Others will, I've heard of folks using a spoon to do that. The problem with using your fillet knife, you can see how much it's twisting and bending as we go through there. So that's one of the things you want to get off there. Others will want to skin it. A lot of folks maybe not have the palate for skin. That's where you're going to need a clean pair of pliers, or you can go to a outdoor store and buy the little clamps that you can get to peel the skin off there as well. So once you get this guy, and we're going to pretend he's already scaled, you're going to have to remove these fins. You got the dorsal fins there. These guys are spiny as well, so really be careful, because it's going to hurt when they get in there. So you can take your knife, go in there and cut those guys off. Okay, so set that off to the side. Same with the tail fin. Okay, a little bit more of a challenge on these guys. You may have to kind of wiggle your knife around. Come over here with the pectoral fins, and you'll need to remove those as well. Okay. Now, before I start removing all these pectoral fins, all right, let's talk about gutting this animal. All right, so you can see right there is the rectum, or the anus. A few things I've seen folks do is they'll come right there and put the tip of their knife inside that anus and make your midline cut there. When you do that, you're cutting into the digestive tract. All right, so we don't want to do that. So if you come in here behind it, okay, and cut around that, just like we do on the kill floor when we're working with livestock. Cut around that, and then make your midline cut. Okay, and again, you're going to have to really practice some good knife handling skills, because we're getting into an animal that is small and kind of slick. All right, and you can see the internal organs there. And it's just a matter of reaching in there and removing the internal organs, being careful not to really tear anything open as well. Okay. Let's get that back to get that off to the side. Now, not a lot of folks like the head being on there when they pan fry these, and so we're going to have to take that off. So I'm going to go right behind the pectoral fin, and right behind this fin by the gill, to remove the head. Look around the other side. You see how delicate these guys are. When I was trying to gut that, I actually tore that as well, so you need to be really careful on those guys. Make sure we get some of the internal organs out of the way, so when we cut through these, and you see it struggling just a little bit with my knife, and that's because we still have the fins on there as well, or the scales, I'm sorry. Come back in here, cut the fins off of this. The fins off there. And again, you know, if you're one of those that doesn't want the skin on there, you can see even on these little guys, you can come in here and be very, very delicate as you start to pull the skin off there. These little panfish is fairly easy to pull that off. Okay, so you can either scale them or you can pull the skin off. Now so it gets a little challenging back here. If that happens, sometimes we can work our way around that. Okay. Now, you see I left a little bit of the tail skin and scales on there. The reason why I did that, and this is something I never really thought of, to be brutally honest with you, until I was watching some videos on this to kind of refresh my memory. When you get into fishing out of state, all right, and you get into some of the big game fish, let's say walleye or bass or something like that, where you're going to bring it from wherever out of state into the state, sometimes I like you to leave a little skin tag on there so they can identify that fish as well. So, and then once you get it, you can kind of come in here and remove that skin tag as well. So just something that again, I'm not for sure. We can ask our folks that work with Fish and Wildlife if that's something they look for. All right. But it's just something that you kind of want to keep in mind there if you're bringing fish, even clean fish from over the border as well. So now we got something that's nice and ready to be pan fried as well. Again, be very careful when eating this because you got the bones inside there. You could try to fillet that, but it's going to be a little bit of a challenge on these little guys as well. But for little kids, they have a ball catching those fish. Cleaned up a little bit after doing our panfish, and we got this nice catfish here. And the folks at Fish and Wildlife were kind enough, when they caught these over the summer, they froze them for us. And at the end, we'll talk about keeping your fillets and your panfish in the freezer and the proper way to do that as well. So you kind of see the slime lines a little goofy on these catfish. Here in the southeast where we are, a lot of people like to fish for catfish. They're really fun. They put up a lot of fight when you catch them. And a lot of people like to go out at night and fish for catfish. And the problem of it is some folks don't like cleaning catfish. They don't like dealing with them, and mainly because the skin on these guys is very, very tough. And hopefully we can show you some ways of dealing with that skin. Again, you can do the same technique to create a pan fry catfish as we did with the smaller panfish as well. Here we've got the rectum cut around that, cut all the way up to the head to remove the internal organs, and then take all your fins off as well. If you're going to fillet this guy, you really don't have to worry about removing the internal organs. We can work around those guys. And so the way we start is we see the pectoral fin between my fingers here. And I don't know if you can see that on there. I'm going to try to bend that back a little bit there, Kevin, so you can see that bone sticking out there. That's the other thing, is these guys are tough. These catfish are really tough. They got a really durable skeleton as well. Not as a delicate a skeleton as some fish, but you can see that bone protruding out there. And so what I'm going to do is come right along that bone, okay? Right like that, using the tip of my knife. And once I get there, now this dorsal fin, he's got a bone. You can see where my knife doesn't go in, but just a little bit further out. But right there, he goes in. So you're going to have to, when you do that, your fillet, you're going to go around that dorsal fin. Now, what you can't really tell is I'm letting my knife kind of glide across the top of that rib cage. And when I get to the point where I can't feel the rib cage with the tip of my knife, I'm going to shove that knife all the way through, just like so. And kind of angling my knife blade down to let that guy ride all the way across the backbone, okay? Come back on the other side as well. Open him up a little bit. Now this is where some folks have an issue, all right? Is you got to be kind of careful as we come in here with your fingers. And to get that fillet off here, I'm going to scoot him around here so maybe you can see what my knife is doing here. I'm going to let my knife tip glide across those rib bones there. You can see kind of pushing and pulling with my knife. And I get across those ribs, come down. Now, this was a little trick that a student of mine taught me with getting the skin off of there. You can see how we left the fillet attached there at the bottom. And again, this is where folks have a bit of a challenge, is this skin can be very, very tough. I remember when I was a kid learning from my grandparents and some of the neighbors that I used to run around with when I was a kid growing up on the Kaskaskia River in Illinois, is we had some pliers and we would skin the fish like that. All right, here's where you can just take your knife and let it guide along that skin. Now you gotta be careful because sometimes these guys can tear through that skin, and kind of remove the fillet from the skin. Now you can see how this is why I want this kind of really flexible blade, because I can really bend it down while keeping my knuckles off the block top. And there you have it, a fillet. And we're going to do the same on the other side. Okay, find that bone right there and go back up. Run around the dorsal fin. Feeling the backbone, feeling the backbone. No backbone right there. Cut through. Let my knife kind of glide across the backbone. Okay. Setting back up. Just like so. Hopefully you can see this a little bit better on this side, as I'm really get you to cooperate a little bit here, fish. There we go. Feeling the backbone, no more backbone. Or rib cage, I should say there. Come across. Open him up like so. Across his fins right there to free him up a little bit more. So again, we kind of left a little bit, didn't leave much of a skin tag on there. Yep, see it came off right there. Now sometimes you get that, and this is why some folks are really don't like catfish, because you get that. Now you can, if you got a nice clean pair of pliers, come in here and remove that, or you can again start from the other side like so. Now this is going to be one of those deals where if you have those nice Kevlar gloves, you'll really like them because it gives you a little bit of grip. Work from the other side as well to remove that skin. Okay. Now, here's some things that I'm going to pass on to you that I've learned. All right. One of the things I've heard some folks talk about is this lateral line right here. I've heard of some people not really paying much attention to that lateral line, and then I've heard of other folks coming in here and coming underneath it and removing that lateral line. You can see it's that red color. Okay. Like so. And what I've heard is that's full of a lot of fat there, and that's where you're going to get that extreme fishy flavor as well. And so you can remove that lateral line, do a better job of removing it down here towards the end. Okay. So you got a nice fillet there. Another thing I've heard of folks doing, and especially on big game fish, you got that really pronounced lateral line, and I've heard of some folks coming in here on either side of that line and just taking the fillet off of it like that. Call it zipping the fish is what I've heard that phraseology. Removing the lateral line like that, okay? And so, again, there's several ways you can do this. Your preference of doing it is your preference, how you want to do that kind of stuff. Once you get your fillets off of here, if you're not going to eat them all at once, and so we got our panfish right here, one of the things you can do is vacuum bag them and then freeze them. And so if you're going to vacuum bag and freeze them, that technology's gotten fairly cost effective. You can go to any store, sporting goods store, if you want one that's camouflage. You can go to just a regular Walmart, Meijer type store to get one as well. And you get the bags, you put them in there, pull a vacuum on it. And what that does is it allows you to freeze that fish and really not have to be too concerned about freezer burn. Freezer burn is when you introduce oxygen into the system there. And so you get a longer time in the freezer when you vacuum package something. Keep in mind, folks, that when you freeze something in a vacuum bag, these guys are mainly water. I'm not just saying the fish, but even regular red meat and poultry, the majority of it, 70+% of those cuts are made up of water. And so we know what happens when water freezes is it expands. And so they'll expand, and when they expand, they still maintain their vacuum, but when you thaw them, that vacuum gets popped, so to speak, okay? And so just be careful when you thaw them. Shouldn't really refreeze things after you thaw them, number one, but number two, realize that vacuum's been compromised there as well. Another challenge you have with using vacuum bags, especially on these panfish here, is that you can get those little bones that poke through there. And we have that in the meats industry as well. We use this stuff called bone guard. It's a really thick fibrous material that we wrap around the bones and then pull a vacuum on that. Not everybody has the luxury of bone guard, but if that's the case, you can get another bag and wrap around those guys and then put them in your vacuum bag and pull a vacuum on there. But again, we've been having fun with this, and just some tips on how to fillet a fish, how to get one ready for pan frying, and some tips on storing your fish afterwards. Fishing's a really good way to spend a nice summer afternoon or evening, bonding with the family as well. And so again, everything tastes better when it's you caught it or processed it yourself. So have fun and enjoy, and with that, we'll take any questions.